What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. Hey, Jason, love your videos. With the Warriors' need for a second option and having $30+ million in expiring salary, what do you think about a Brandon Ingram or Anthony Davis fit with the Warriors? Are they realistically gettable? Who would you also consider? So Brandon Ingram is an interesting fit in a lot of ways on both sides of the spectrum. Like, he is a bit of a ball stopper. Like, Brandon Ingram is at his best when he can play a more heliocentric style. He's one of the better passing forwards in the league, and he's really good with cross-court passes. He's got long arms. He can get that, just whip that thing across the court into the shooting pocket when a low man steps over in a ball screen. He can really be methodical when he's picking you apart in spread pick and rolls. He likes to run a lot of ISOs around the elbow. He'll come off of off-ball action and look to score around the elbow when he's got a defender trailing him in those actions. Technically, not a great fit within the Warriors offense, which is very much quick decisions, read and react, and everyone's involved. The ball's flowing from side to side. So that would be somewhat of a concern, right? But there's more complications than that. For instance, he's shooting a lot more threes this year. He's taking 7 per game and making 37% of them. He was below 4 attempts per game in each of the previous 2 seasons. He's converting spot-up possessions at 1.43 points per possession. So he is doing a better job of quickly catching and attacking in those spot-up situations. Also, there's something to be said about having variety in your offense. That's potential upside, right? And here's the thing. Anytime you make a star trade, there's risk. So for the record, before you ever even consider this process or even venture into this in terms of changing your kind of mental approach to this team towards tweaking the roster in the future, anytime you make a trade, there's a risk. So if you want to pretend like this can't go wrong, I don't know what to tell you. Every trade has risk. Maybe the fit is super clunky and the team underachieves. That's a potential outcome. Maybe you trade Jonathan Kuminga in a deal like this and he goes somewhere else and he ends up being a superstar. Now, I don't think that's likely. Jonathan Kuminga had a big game last night in the win against the Rockets, right? But I don't think he has superstar upside. I think he has star upside. I don't think he has superstar upside. If you told me Jonathan Kuminga was the 20th best player in the league in 5 years, I'd believe that. Do I think he's going to be the 7th best player in the league in 5 years? No, I don't think that he has them in there, that in his game, right? But there's obviously a risk when you make that type of deal, right? Look at the Clippers. You trade for Paul George. Suddenly you're the championship favorite in Vegas. Shea is a 20-year-old rookie who just averaged 11 points per game. Now, to be clear, when Shea was Jonathan Kuminga's age, right now, Shea was much, much, much better. He was like a 24-point per game, 50-40 guy. He was just at a much higher level than Jonathan Kuminga is at right now. But yeah, you make that trade and Shea goes off and becomes a top-tier superstar. I think he's the 4th best player in the world. And the Clippers underachieve, and so the gamble doesn't pay off. That's part of the risk, right? But then there's also versions of that risk where things kind of click into place and it ends up dramatically improving your team. And who cares what happens with the other guys? You accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish. That's the game. That's the game of making tweaks to the roster, right? And there is upside with a guy like Brandon Ingram. Even though Brandon plays different, playing different doesn't necessarily mean bad. There are advantages to playing different ways in different parts of the game or being able to tweak your play style based on who you're playing against. Even the old Warriors teams, if you guys remember, when Sean Livingston and Leandro Barbosa would come into the game, they played very different than the Steph Curry lineups. Talent is talent at the end of the day. And again, you look at those late game situations, imagine the final couple possessions in the Denver Nuggets game. And all of a sudden you have Steph getting denied off ball. And all of a sudden the ball's in Andrew Wiggins or Jonathan Kuminga's hands. If that's Brandon Ingram, he's got a better chance of getting a bucket there because that's what he does for a living. And it improves your chances of thriving in those types of situations. So there's upside as well. And that's why it's anytime you want to make yourself better or improve your situation, you typically have to take a risk. And that risk comes with the possibility of reward or the possibility of it not working out in your favor. That's the name of the game. Now, Anthony Davis, like you mentioned in your question, I just think that's too unrealistic. I don't think the Lakers would trade Anthony Davis unless they got an absolute haul of draft compensation and young players back. And I just think that would drain the Warriors' resources too much. And then also Anthony Davis and Draymond Green are somewhat redundant. And so I don't think that makes a ton of sense. As a basketball fan, I would love to see LeBron play with the Warriors. I just think him and Steph are such a natural fit, and I think it would instantly vault them into top-tier championship contention, but it would just be way too difficult to pull it off. Like, you'd have to convince LeBron to leave his family, and I just don't think he'd ever do that. And then LeBron's salary is huge and tough to match, so you'd have to include someone like Wiggins or Draymond, which includes a lot of risk and potential downside there. It'd be difficult to pull off, so it's never going to happen. But obviously, as a basketball fan, I think it'd be fun to watch LeBron and Steph try to make a playoff run together. But like, the actual options are somewhat limited, right? It's guys like Brandon Ingram, guys like Jeremy Grant, guys like Zach LaVine that are on the table, and all of them come with risk. You just have to decide if you want to risk something to try to win a championship. And that's a tough decision to make. And I understand the complication, and that's why I always talk about like waiting till the deadline. You're just going to have more information than you have now. You'll have roughly twice as much information when you get to that point, which will give you a better opportunity to make an informed decision at that point. Is Tyrese Haliburton even a top 10 point guard right now? He's just been so inconsistent / bad this season. Here are guys ahead of him right now in no particular order: Steph, Shea, Luka, Kyrie, Dame, Jalen Brunson, De'Aaron Fox, LaMelo Ball, John Morant, and James Harden. I think I didn't agree with all those guys except for LaMelo. The stuff with LaMelo is a little complicated because like he is playing really heliocentric, really high usage, and even though he's putting up big box score numbers, the team isn't really scoring particularly well. By the way, this is before his injury, but like the LaMelo stuff is a little bit like fool's gold, good stats on a bad team kind of thing. But all those other guys are definitely playing better than Tyrese Haliburton. The Tyrese Haliburton thing is one of the strangest things that I can remember seeing in my time covering the league. With the way he was playing this time last year, he legitimately looked like the next great superstar in the league. He looked like evolutionary Steve Nash. The Bucks couldn't guard him. The Celtics couldn't guard him. Like it was just a problem for everybody. And then he hurt his hamstring, and he's never been able to get that athletic burst back. And what's scary about that is we've seen a couple examples of this where it's like James Harden hurts his hamstring and he's never really been the same. Remember how good Devin Booker was in the NBA Finals run in 2021? And since then, he's been able to have some bursts, but he's had some soft tissue injuries that have kind of recurred over the last few years. And he's been somewhat inconsistent in being able to reach the level of play that we envision for a Devin Booker, right? And so like there are some examples of this where guys like James Harden, Tyrese Haliburton, Devin Booker, where like the hamstring injury seems to kind of limit their mobility a little bit, and then they fail to reach the ceiling they were originally at. So I'm hoping that's not what it is, but it's just there's some weird stuff too with the burst where like at home he seems to be like a lot more explosive. The home road splits for him are like crazy out of control. So I don't really know what to make of it. I think I mostly agree with your list that, like I said, outside of LaMelo, I'm always hesitant to write guys off completely. LeBron said something in his post-game presser after the Heat game that I thought was interesting. He said, he's like, I know how quickly things can turn in this league. And it's the truth. Like, reputation has such a lingering kind of effect on discourse surrounding players. It's like, if a guy goes and plays bad for 2 weeks, it completely changes your impression of that player, right? Like as a Laker fan, I can think of like 2023, Rui has an awesome playoff run. And coming out of that, everyone's like, man, LeBron, AD, Austin, Rui, what a core. That's a squad. Let's see if we can't anchor those guys with a few other good players and see if you can't make a run, right? And then Rui's just flat out bad in the Denver series the next year. And now it's like, oh, Rui's unserious. He can't do this. Then like Rui comes out to start the season and he's pretty good this year. But then as of late, he's been really bad. And it's like all of a sudden, like your opinion of these guys just like wildly oscillates back and forth based on how they're playing. And that's the thing. Like all it takes is him getting healthier, getting his legs underneath him, regaining his confidence, mojo, rhythm, and going on a run for 2 weeks where he looks like the old Tyrese Haliburton. And all of a sudden, most people won't even care about the stretches where he looked bad. And so like it's kind of just a weird thing. And there's a lot of like other stuff going on with Indiana too, in terms of like rotation decisions, some of the stuff with like the fit with Ben Mathurin. Like they have a funk of their own that they're dealing with. But like, I will say that what I saw happen with Tyrese Haliburton over the course of the last year is definitely one of the strangest things that I've seen in my time covering the league.